Everyone in the Bittensor ecosystem is trying to figure out which subnet is going to get that mainstream moment, or in other words, when they're going to get that deep seek moment. But in my opinion, I think we're trying to find the subnet that gets that deep mind moment. Let me explain further. My name's Jeremy, aka School of Crypto, and I'm bringing you another Bittensor video. So in my opinion, what we're trying to find out is which one of these 128 subnets is going to break into the mainstream. And when I say DeepSeek moment, if you don't know what DeepSeek is, it's a Chinese large language model that came into the fold in the beginning of January of 2025. And it hit all news stations, it hit all media, all the AI influencers jumped on this. And it was a smaller large language model that actually competed with ChatGPT and the other mainstream large language models in the market. And people rethought how to build and construct these LLMs based on the progress that DeepSeek made. But in my opinion, what we're really trying to find out and what we're really trying to achieve as a community is trying to get that deep mind moment. And what do I mean by deep mind moment? So DeepMind was a company that was sold to Google in 2014 for $400 million. So this is an AI company that did a lot of research, specifically with deep research and reinforcement learning, and really came into the fold with solving a game called Go. So they created an AI that beat all the best Go players, and they called this AI AlphaGo. And after that, they set their sights on some more challenging problems. So what they wanted to do was solve a problem called the protein folding problem. So the protein folding problem basically determines a protein's 3D structure from its amino acid sequence. And mathematically, that seemed to be infeasible to the scientific community based on the millions, billions, trillions of combinations that it would take in order to figure out these sequences. But in 2020, they actually got to a certain percentage, it was up to 90%, where they solved the protein folding problem. And that this could be used by scientists and researchers all around the world in order to figure out what these protein structure sequences are, which was just a huge accomplishment. And in my opinion, with Bittensor, yes, we want to be mainstream. Yes, we want millions and billions of users, and that's extremely important. But what I think is even more important is to have some sort of discovery or some sort of innovation that saves people's lives, furthers the AI sector, or ultimately just breaks through in some sort of category that's never been solved before. So I want to break down a few different projects that are literally trying to do the impossible and may just do it and may just get that deep mind moment for Bittensor. So the first project that I'd like to point out is Hone. So Hone is an AGI subnet, and they're trying to figure out human level reasoning for an artificial intelligence system. And this is something that's been a bottleneck for AI and specifically large language models in general. When you ask an AI certain human level reasoning and it's trying to display, a certain type of problem or a puzzle, they're not able to really do it. It's very, AIs and large language models are very computational based, and they're very good at mathematical problems and writing and certain categories like that. But when it comes to just like basic human level reasoning, they fail dramatically. So what Hone is trying to do is has a AGI benchmark that the miners are trying to solve for every single day. and ultimately trying to achieve that AGI. And what would that mean? So in terms of achieving AGI, this is kind of like the missing piece of AI in general. And ultimately, if they do get to the point of reaching that level, it can ultimately be something that turns AIs into human-like conscious sentient beings, that can actually think like humans. They can do their computational research kind of like what they're doing now with the large language models, and they can ultimately be the AI that everyone's kind of dreamed them of being. So that's something that's like extremely exciting. And if Hone pulls this off, it would be probably the biggest discovery in AI history. So that is very, very exciting. And then you have the second subnet that I'd like to go over, and it's actually a combination of subnets. So it's called Quantum Compute and Quantum Innovate, and that's subnet 48 and 63. And what they do is they're tackling the whole entire industry of quantum computing. And if you don't know much about quantum computing, this is like a supercomputer on steroids that ultimately can make these calculations at the snap of a finger, versus sort of traditional computers that takes a lot longer. And when we're talking about solving certain problems and trying to get down to calculating certain equations, these quantum computers can have the upside of really breaking down like an industry that can really just make waves in terms of computational power and capacity and what you can do on a daily basis. So what does these two subnets do? The compute subnet, they actually rented out a few quantum computers which are very much not accessible. It's very hard to get your hands on a quantum computer. It's just very expensive, and there's not many out there. And they're able to get their hands on it, and they actually have allowed anyone to be able to rent and utilize a quantum computer remotely. So that's very exciting. And then in terms of the Quantum Innovate, they're actually giving these quantum problems to their miners to try to solve. So that's sort of like the research arm of the subnet. So you have the ability to use the computing, and then you have the ability to research for the computing in order to further their studies in the field. So again, if they're able to solve quantum computing, again, it's another one of those genres like in the field that it's very early stages, and if they're able to come up with a solution, it's going to be very big news, very, very big news. So that's another kind of like reaching for the impossible type of subnet. And then the last one is Metanova. So Metanova is a lab that ultimately, they research molecules that can, be able to bind with certain proteins in order to solve for diseases. And they got their hands on billions of molecules that they can actually research. And this is something where, if they're able to, solve, for what these, what this data can do in terms of how it meshes together between the molecules and the protein structures, this is something that can, actually cure diseases worldwide and be able to ultimately save millions or billions of lives. So think like with this subnet, the most is on the line, and it's like super applicable to being able to cure people and be able to make people sick people healthy, right? And be able to just kind of like further and expand like the medical field. And kind of like protein folding, there's just so many different sequences and combinations and trials that they need to do and research and study. So that's absolutely like a real critical, type of field that they're looking to go after, and ultimately can make maybe even the most impact. So again, when we're talking about DeepSeek moment, yes, we want to go mainstream. Yes, we want lots of users. Yes, we want the attention. Yes, we want it all going to Bittensor, right? But I'm in this for changing the world. I'm not sure about you guys, but I want to see one of these subnets really be a game changer in terms of, making a breakthrough in technology, like Hone's trying to do, or trying to solve quantum computing, which again, it seems like super impossible right now, what quantum innovating, what quantum compute's trying to do. And I want to see something, like Metanova trying to save lives, and that's something that, it can ultimately just change humanity for the better. So I don't want a DeepSeek moment, I want a DeepMind moment, and I want one of these subnets to really break through, just like DeepMind did with the protein folding problem. And what do you guys think? Do you think that these are just too ambitious of problems to solve? Do you think it's feasible? Do you think that, these guys have a chance to be successful, or is it just too big to handle? Definitely let me know down below. Appreciate your time, and I'm going to try to stay warm over here in the snow, and look forward to talking to you guys soon. Take care.